Welcome to a full set review of the new expansion that comes out later today, Magical Misadventures. I'm going to go over every single card, rating them between 1 and 5 stars. 5 stars meaning it's a meta-defining card, seeing play in almost every deck wherever possible, and 1 star meaning that it's utter unplayable trash. So as most of you have noticed, I don't do reaction videos anymore on newly revealed champions, simply because I don't like that kind of content. Those videos are rushed because you want to be the first one to get that reveal video out, and these videos are going to be mostly irrelevant in less than 24 hours. So instead, I'm going to do this video where I'm probably still going to get a lot of the ratings wrong despite the entire set being available, but at least it'll be funny to look back on in like a month or 2 months from now to see how far off I actually was with my ratings. Also, one final announcement: we're hosting a tournament in the Snnuy Discord right now where all of the tier 1 decks are banned. So the deck builders among us are really going to shine in this tournament. A link for that will be down below in the description as well. Alright, now to get into the ratings, I'm not going extremely in depth on every single card. I'm just going to do my general impressions, a rating, and then maybe a few comments on some of the more special cards of the set. Let's start with the Mecha Yordles in the Rumble package. I'm rating these based on how good they are compared to each other, because you can't actually put any of them in your deck. Even the worst of these Yordles are still going to be better than most of your average cards, so let's just get those out of the way first. Bouncer and Bolt, 4 stars. Fury Horn Crasher, 2 stars. Geode Mecha Forcer, 3 stars. Salty Spinner, 1 star. Smash and Dash, 4 stars. Professor Von Mech, 3 stars. Shadow Tech Walker, 5 stars. Dune Hopper Mech, 3 stars. Trump Techer, 4 stars. Earthshaker, 1 star. And Lil Dipper, 5 stars. So most of these should come as no surprise, but I will say that all of these can be better depending on the current game and what deck you're playing against. For example, Trump Techer is a 5-star card if you get him when Rumble is leveled, or if you have a big board, obviously. Lil Dipper is 1 star if you don't have a unit to discard. But in general, the cards with higher ratings are the ones you should be most often looking for in almost every game. Shadow Tech Walker is definitely the best one in my opinion, because a 2/5 elusive with impact is almost impossible to remove and is going to be pushing a lot of damage for you. An elusive in Noxus that you can buff up is a very scary thought too. And Lil Dipper can win you the game on the spot if you use the discard on something like a Scion or a Lost Soul, which is probably the deck you're going to be playing these Yordle mechs in. Like, I'm gonna assume it's some kind of Noxus Bandle City or Noxus Piltover discard package, and then it becomes almost like a delayed Spectral Matron, but you don't even have to be in Shadow Isles. When you're not sure what card you should take because it's still early in the game or something, I think Bouncer and Bolt and Smash and Dash are going to be the most commonly picked because they are cheap and they can just be played without needing any additional requirements. They're just good to drop on the board. Okay, now onto the cards that generate these mechs for you, so actual ratings of cards you can put in your deck. Squeaker, 3 stars. Scrap Heap, 4 stars. Arena Promoter, 3 stars. And Bilge Rat Rascals, 4 stars. Squeaker looks like an expensive Spacey Sketcher, but the Mecha Yordles are so good that it's going to be worth a tempo loss in a deck like Draven Scion or Rumble Scion in this case, because that deck doesn't really have a very hard time regaining tempo depending on what you discard. And Scrap Heap is a very good burst speed discard for only 1 mana to get you an incredibly powerful card. Arena Promoter to me feels a little expensive for 4 mana. It has okay stats with tough on top, so it's definitely not a bad body when you also get that manifest, and you do get the discount later, so it's kind of like a 3 mana card where you get that 1 mana discount on some of the powerful mechs later. But still, I think this one is 3 stars because you can't just jam this into every single deck. Bilge Rat Rascals, however, is 4 stars because I think getting Spell Shield on some of the units like the Shadow Tech Walker is going to feel really good and make it near impossible to remove a unit like that. So as you can tell, I'm very positive and optimistic about the Mecha Yordle direction that Rumble has taken us, and I've always been a huge fan of Invoking, and this Mecha Yordle stuff feels almost the same as creating big Celestials, except that the Mecha Yordles are more like, you know, good mid-range on-curve units rather than just different tools for various situations like the Celestials can be. And before we get to Rumble, we'll talk about some of the support cards that are supposed to be from his package too. Fix 'em Uppers is... Alright, this one I think is really hard to rate because I want to give it something like 4 stars, because if you proc this on turn 2, it's a 3/3 that can keep growing, and that can get out of hand pretty fast in the right deck, but since it takes up a slot in your deck without any real potential to take over a game because it doesn't doesn't have any keywords, I'm going to give it 2 stars. The Electro Harpoon is 3 stars. It's good to remove cards like the upcoming Yordle Explorer, for example, but I don't think you wanna discard too many cards unless it's to create Mecha Yordles. The Arena Mecha Caster is 1 star because 6 mana is just too expensive. And lastly, Rumble's Champ spell is 2 stars. This spell is good to get when you already have Rumble on the field because it helps him level, and it is a grand effect, but I don't think you would ever put this in your deck. So it's just good as a champ spell. And then finally, we get to Rumble. 4 stars. Rumble looks incredibly powerful, and if you level him up, he becomes a value machine, which has just proven to be a very strong effect to have as a champion, especially if he goes into a deck with Scion, where you have Rumble as like the value generator with all the mechs, and then Scion can be your game ender. Obviously, the only thing that's better at outright ending games is Lee Sin, but swarming the board with leveled Rumble is basically going to do the same thing for you. That's just the amount of value that opponents are not able to deal with. So my only problem with Rumble, and the only reason that he's not 5-star, is the fact that you have to commit basically 4 cards to play him, because you really need all those keywords on him to make him effective at actually making an impact on the field. You have Rumble himself, and then you have to discard up to 3 cards, and like I said, you really want to discard all 3 to make it worth your while. And then with that, he gets Quick Attack as Spell Shield and Impact, but Impact is basically irrelevant. Quick Attack as Spell Shield really help you in combat to make effective trades. Impact doesn't really do anything. It hits the enemy nexus for 1 damage, which is good for leveling him, but that means that he is still very vulnerable to being challenged and taken out that way. So I don't know if that matters because there are no real good challenge units in the game right now. We do have Vi, but she also dies to Rumble, so it's still probably worth it. It just makes us feel like Rumble is a very all-in play, but in a deck with Scion and all his zombies, discarding can actually turn into an advantage. So that will be the most likely candidate for a deck that Rumble wants to go in, and I really think that that's going to be a very competitive deck. All right, next is a Targon package. Let's talk about the champion first this time, Pantheon. I think Pantheon is also 4 stars, which really shows how much faith I have in this Fated package. Yeah, all right, so he's pretty good. Pantheon comes down as a 4-2, which doesn't seem very good, but he does have a good amount of attack with Barrier and Overwhelm on top. And then with Faded, he's never really going to be a 4-2. It's going to turn into a 5-3 on pretty much the same turn. And then if you level him, he becomes like a Super Victor or a Discount Arsenal, whatever you want to call it. He already has Overwhelm as keyword though, so you don't have to worry as much about high rolling a good keyword to actually win the game. And if you've targeted Pantheon twice, he has 7 attack, because when he levels, he gets 1 attack, and then 2 more, 6, 7, which means that's already almost Arsenal stats, and that is more than enough to actually win a game. I think Pantheon is going to make Targon a very playable region again, and hey, thank God for that, you know, because we've basically had to play with 9 regions for a little while now. So next are Pantheon supporting cards. Saga Seeker 3 stars, Eula 2 stars, Blinded Mystic 3 stars, Wounded White Flame 4 stars, We Stand Together 5 stars, Freed Colossus 2 stars, Against the Odds 1 star, Shield Vault 2 stars, Campor the Doubt 2 stars. So with the Pantheon package, you don't really want to just dump units on curve until turn 4, but instead play 1 good unit to focus all your targeted abilities on. And Saga Seeker is there for exactly that, so I'm very happy that this card exists for the Pantheon package. You drop him on turn 1, and then on turn 2, maybe even turn 3, you target him with a buff, and then suddenly you have a very good 1-drop that actually lasts you almost the entire game, and you're working on your Pantheon level. So it really doesn't matter that there's no 2-cost Faded unit. There is a 3-cost Faded unit, a Wounded by Flame, but that one is a little bit more flexible because it also has Fury. Saga Seeker is just perfect for a Pantheon deck. That's all you need, a good 1-drop with that keyword. Eula is great for the Vi Targon decks to give Vi Overwhelm, but I don't see much use for her elsewhere. The Wounded White Flame, however, is crazy, not just for Faded, but also for dragons. It doesn't kill Chow, so it gives you an extra card. But, okay, this is something that a lot of people overlook and I haven't actually seen anyone else say. If you manage to damage your Dragon Chow and get it down to 2 health, you play the Wounded White Flame, it will kill the Chow, giving you only 1 card as normal. Your Wounded White Flame will turn into a 3-5, and if you then proc Faded, it will turn into a 4-6 on turn 3. You only get 1 card, but a 4-6 on turn 3 against another any other mid-range deck is a complete blowout and will win you the game. This is one of the strongest cards in the set, in my opinion, and the only thing we're gonna have to wait to see if it will actually find a home in Faded decks or in Dragon decks. So that means, will those decks actually be playable enough to make Wounded White Flame find a home? It's very good, but it's not a pokey stick where you just jam it into every single deck, because you do need those synergy points to make it good. If it was that easy to proc Faded or to proc Fury, it'd be 5 stars, but since there are synergy points that you need to have, 4 stars. We Stand Together is going to be a staple and is going to be like a pokey stick in almost every Targon deck going forward. It's an insane combat trick on the same power level, maybe even a higher power level than a card like Troll Chant. Easily 5 stars. So against the odds, and the Freed Colossus seem like they do too little for too much mana, and they're too conditional. Shield Vault is basically just Battlefield Prowess and Guile combined into a single card, and both of these cards are terrible. You cannot main deck them. But combining 2 cards into one is obviously better than drawing these 2 cards individually. So it does have that going for it. Also, let me help you out of the dream. This is not good enough to make Yasuo playable. It would be if it was fast speed. In fact, if it was fast speed, it would be one of the most broken cards released in this set. But it doesn't do that, so on slow speed, I just don't think it's very playable. It is pretty good as a champion spell though, because it can proc Faded, and it can delay a turn by stunning something, so that's why it's 2 stars instead of just 1 star. Campor, I hope I'm pronouncing that right by the way, is too slow and deals too little. It doesn't even have Faded, which makes sense because it's like a demon or something, the Demon of Doubt, the Demon of Guilt, I don't know. But that also means that you can't grow its stats, so that means that the keywords that it has, which are very good, are actually a lot less good because it's going to be a 5/4 most of the time. Too much work for too little payoff, or too many conditions to be met, because after targeting something 6 times, you also have to target Campor to make it bigger, and that's just not worth it. If I was rating this on visual animations, I don't know if you've seen the reveal trailer, but this card has an insane animation, and it might just be worth playing this card just for that. Alright, we're moving on to the Ionian champions, starting with Kennen. 3 stars. I waited with rating these until Ahri got released to see if there was any synergy I should be aware of before rating these 2 champions. And while the synergy is there, it's a little awkward, and Ahri really looks like she wants to play in a full-on elusive deck. Kennen's power comes from being a 1-drop that can generate cards for you, and the fact he's an Ionian dual region for Bandletree. He's a good champion, but all the text besides the 1 mana and quick attack on a 2/1 is almost irrelevant. So I have a really hard time giving him more than 3 stars. The deck that Kennen and Ahri enable look very fun to play, and I'm going to be experimenting with it, but I just have a very hard time seeing it be anything more than a low tier 2 deck right now. And so before we look at more Ionian followers and spells, let's just talk about Ahri too. 2 stars. I'll be honest, I had to read her text like 3 times before I got it, but basically Ahri lets you hit her blocker and then the blocker of her ally to the right, while recalling that ally to safety. So this is like a recall engine on a unit, which is very good, but it doesn't actually give any real payoff for recalling units besides the text that the followers have on them, like Droplet who draws you a card. The synergy here with the Tailcloak Matriarch that got added last expansion is pretty nasty though, because he replaces a recalled ally with an ephemeral copy, and that should just enable some really nasty value plays. So like I said, Ahri, when you look at her, wants to be played in a full elusive deck that likes to go wide, but it still requires you to jump through multiple hoops to actually enable her effect. And even if that happens, recall is still a tempo loss. It's just really hard to say from just looking at the card. So I still won't be surprised if Ahri ends up in some combo heavy deck that plays for really high value plays, like using the Matriarch with a card like Risu to get multiple Storm Clouds during an attack, something like that. And well, speaking of that card, let's move on to the supporting cards, because it's just, there's not much to say. I just don't think it's going to be very good. Risu, the Silent Storm, is 2 stars. Ember Monk is 1 star. Lightning Rush, Kennen's champion spell, 2 stars. Gust Monk, 2 stars. Tornado Warrior, 1 star. Quicken, 4 stars. Thunder Fist, 1 star. So the only playable card here is Quicken, which is going to destroy a lot of champions currently in the meta, like Swain, Viger, and Talia. And it's also the only time recall is actually good, because you're using it to screw over your opponent's play instead of screwing over your own plays. And that really just sums up the rest of these cards. Ember Monk is way too expensive. Gust Monk makes the recall awkward because it's at the end of your turn. Thunder Fist is just flat out bad because it requires too much work to get an okay minion. And Tornado Warrior, I had some actual hope for, but recalling and spending 2 mana plus the cost of the recall card isn't enough to make that play worthwhile, in my opinion. And that leaves us with the cards from the Ionia side of the Recall archetype. Spoiler, most of them also are not very good. The Mourned is 3 stars, just because it's an elusive. Woodland Keeper, 1 star. Pathless Ancient, 1 star. God Willow Seedling, 2 stars, because it might actually enable some combos in different decks. And Landmarks with a play effect have actually been fairly playable. Memory's Cloak, 2 stars. Might be good in a Lee Sin deck or to stop a huge Jawfish attack on your key minion. 9 Lives is 3 stars, because if Concussive Palm is a 4-star card, then in my opinion, this is slightly worse. It's good to stop wide attacks, because you get 2 minions at burst speed, which is pretty good in the Bandle City meta. But a 3-2 and a 1-drop isn't going to help you against some big overwhelm attack, whereas Concussive Palm can do that. You also can't like preemptively stop an attack by stunning something and developing a unit for yourself. It's also going to be that surprise, hey, here's 2 minions during an attack. Charm is Ahri's champion spell, 2 stars. This might actually be pretty good because there are a bunch of quick attackers that actually do go in that Ahri and Kennen deck. Maybe even the Ember Monk or Tornado Warrior if you roll quick attack. But the downside of recalling an ally is still too big of a price to pay. Windsinger is 1 star, simply too slow to play a unit for 6 mana with that effect. Sinon the Thousand-Tailed is actually 3 stars, because drawing 2 and buffing your board is surprisingly good with or without the recalls. Children of the Forest is 2 stars, like a Harrowing for your ephemerals, but generally you aren't going to recall your biggest units because you don't want to pay their mana for a second time. It's pretty good with Risu, because you can get multiple 7/3s, but it's pretty unlikely that a 1/1 is going to be your strongest follower. So all in all, disappointing archetype, and it looks like all hope is truly lost for recall. Ahri and Kennen have amazing aesthetics, so it's almost a shame really, but Ionia is still a very powerful and frustrating region to play against, so I can't really say that I'm too upset about it. And lastly, let's talk about the most controversial card of the set, Yordle Explorer. I hate to do this, but it's a 5-star card. I think it is as powerful as some people are making out to be, and unless there are changes, I think this card is going to take over the meta with Bandle City Demacia decks. If a single card can define how a meta is playing by forcing you to play cards to deal with it, like the Electro Harpoon that got released this expansion, or even something as simple as a Mystic Shot, that's a meta-defining card, and that's worth 5 stars. Yordle Captain is 3 stars. I think it's slightly too slow, and you get to pay off a little bit too late. A lot of people think this is on the same power level as Poppy, but Poppy, I actually just read the patch note, got nerfed to a 3/3, so maybe it is actually stronger than Poppy now, but I still think that because Poppy allows you to buff the board that you have been building the previous turn, instead of having to buff the units you play after turn 4, is a pretty big deal and makes it considerably worse than Poppy herself. And then we also have the Grumble Slug, the cutest card. Is it the cutest card? It might be the cutest card of the set. It's 3 stars. It's very good in Bandle Tree, and it's an efficient 2-drop for builds for their decks, much like the Marai Warden. I think Marai Warden is slightly better in most cases, but this is dual region, so it has that going for it, and that makes it slot into a few different decks. There's also the Minion, who is 2 stars. Very good to get off a Manifest, but I don't think this card is main deckable. And that was my full review for the Magic Misadventures expansion set. I really hope you enjoyed this video, because I tried to do ratings, which should add more value to how you think about certain cards and the set as a whole, rather than just giving first impressions when a video comes out with a new champion. Enjoy the set when it comes out later today. Comment below with what deck you're going to be trying first, and I look forward to see you all soon in daily videos that I'm going to be posting with all the new sweet content.